Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the live e-waste seminar from EarthUP. We are pleased to have today Steven Bay, the co-founder of EarthUP. I'm also here from EarthUP, and then we have a very special guest, Steven Napoli, who comes from TERRA, which besides being the Latin word for earth, is also a rather clever acronym. So do you want to tell us what that is, Steven?
Well, being a native Ohioan, I think those that are native Ohioans will understand this. It's the Electronics Reuse and Recycling Alliance. And you will note that we put the first R is reuse, because reuse is the most sustainable way to handle used electronics.
Well, and that's a great place to get started. So first up, what is e-waste? Like, what are some examples of e-waste in our lives, in our homes? What are some things we wouldn't think of as e-waste that actually are?
Well, historically, the definition of e-waste has just been anything that kind of plugged into a wall. That has obviously kind of evolved as now it's anything that's plugs into a wall or has a battery in it. There are so many things in our homes. Everything runs on electricity. So, that's a lot of those now even more are, have got circuit boards in them. So they're being computerized. They have got, Wi-Fi chips in them, the Internet of Things. Really, yeah, if you look at it from that broad of a perspective, that anything that runs on electrical power in any way, shape, or form is e-waste. Once you're done with it, then that covers a lot of different devices, big and small.
And specifically, right, like the amount of e-waste, right, like that's also massively increasing over time, right?
Yeah. So there is the UN has a ongoing program where every year that they look at this material and kind of try to judge and see where it's coming from, how much it is, how fast it's growing, and it's called the Global E-Waste Monitor. And the last reporting period, they're always a little bit behind. So the last reporting period was from 2019, and I wrote these things down just so I had them handy. That they estimated, which not quite sure how they do their numbers, because it's just difficult to with a global population to figure out how much is actually being thrown out. But their estimations were, some 53.6 million metric tons of e-waste was generated in 2019. So that means gotten rid of. Some of that was recycled, a very small percentage of about, they estimate between 10 to 12% was recycled in some fashion. Not all of it according to good environmental standards. So there's a lot of room there for growth. But that's the equivalent to just get your arms around a number like that, because what's 53.6 million metric tons? That's the equivalent of about 41 million cars. And with here in the U.S., we purchased about 17 million new cars per year. 2.5 years worth of new cars in weight that's being dumped worldwide in terms of new e-waste being generated. And they're anticipating, because this is one of the fastest growing waste streams that we have, that's going to double by 2030. And the unfortunate part of it is not only is there a lot of great material in there that can be reused, but those that don't get caught, that get through and get into our trash, they're contributing to 70% of the toxins that we're putting into our solid waste stream. So all of the, the mercury, the cadmium, the heavy earth elements that are, have, on certain aspects, they provide a lot of, benefits to a circular economy and our modern way of life, but not put into landfills or get contaminating our water and our land, could cause some significant damage to human health, especially, especially young children and babies in the womb.
So let's say that I have my electric toothbrush, right? And it's no longer holding a charge and all that sort of stuff. And I think that, and there's a product placement here, I think that I'm done with it and I'm going to throw it out, right? What happens if I just pitch that electric toothbrush in the regular old trash?
Well, first, the good material that's in there is gone forever. We don't, in 1,000 years, they're going to be, when we do something different now, they're going to be harvesting our landfills for materials. So you've got batteries in there, especially like the lithium ion batteries, very highly toxic and can contaminate if not properly recycled. Plastics that last for thousands of years, and all the other circuitry in there that can be recovered. with it, even those little tiny, they'll have chips. So those chips will contain, silver, they'll contain gold, minuscule amounts, but in aggregate, that stuff all adds up. It has to come from somewhere. So unless we're recovering that material when we're done with it, then, we end up having to mine new, and that's a limited resource. So from a, what do you do with it kind of perspective, it depends on where you live. So there are a lot of states, California has a very good program where every electronic device you buy has a special tax associated with it that ends up paying for the back end recycling of it. And there are a lot of locations where you can drop off material. That's extremely rare across the US. Where I live in Tennessee, even our municipal collection, the city of Nashville, right now is in a contract dispute. We don't have any e-waste collection. So a lot of that material is just going straight in the trash. So there have been some good partners in this, companies like Staples and Best Buy that have for many years provided a lot of consumer opportunities for people to bring in their materials and drop it off. They do have, it is limited to a certain extent as to what you can bring in, what they will take. But that's been a big help. And then we have a program at TERRA, which, just so for people to know, so TERRA, Electronics Reuse and Recycling Alliance, we are a network of exclusively certified electronics recycling companies. So those that have earned either an e-stewards or an R2 certification for the way they process their material transparently and sustainably. So within our network, which is currently about 90 facilities in the US, Canada, Mexico, and a single operation in Costa Rica, represents the largest network of certified recyclers in North America. Amongst that group, there's a subset that is part of our mail-in program that we call Done With It. So you can find us at donewithit.org. We actually have a promo code for EarthUP where you can get a 10% discount by using promo code EarthUP at our site, where we've broken it down where if you want to recycle a laptop, a tablet, or a specific device like a phone, there's opportunities for that. But if you just have general scrap, I've got 10 pounds of waste, or I got 20 pounds of waste, I got cords, I got a toothbrush, I've got that click clock from the 1970s that finally gave up the ghost, and I want to make sure that stuff gets recycled properly. I can go to donewithit.org. I can order a shipping label that provides up to 50 pounds for a consumer. I can mail that in. It's going to go directly to one of our certified recyclers, one of 28 that we've identified that are working with us across the US and Canada. So we keep logistics short, so we're not just burning up a bunch of material sending California e-waste off to New York. It goes to our closest facility. If you send in data, if you had a phone or a laptop or something that had your personal data on it, our certified recyclers, they destroy that data. So they make sure, just from it's a consumer protection that's baked into our system, is that whenever you send it in directly with a certified recycling facility, data gets destroyed, the material gets recycled or reused, hopefully reused if it can be, and recycled it if it can't. So we're trying to, this is a relatively new program. It's only been a couple of years old. TERRA is only a couple of years old, but we're looking to expand that program in a couple of different areas. So it's currently mail-in. We're working with brands and organizations and cities to do on-site collections, and it's still kind of underneath that Done With It brand name. And we're doing, which is really exciting, we started this during the pandemic, which is we're taking materials that can be reused for students, for young adults, for seniors, typically your laptops, your tablets, and your Chromebooks, getting those refurbished and getting those back into the community to those that don't have those. So, it's amazing. Even in a city you think is progressive, or, like Philadelphia or even New York, about 10% of the population does not have any computing device inside the home, not even a phone that has internet access. So, we're working with an organization called Digitunity, where we're kind of coming at it from both sides, where, we're delivering devices that have been refurbished. They're helping provide, Wi-Fi and internet connectivity access, so we can bring, we can start bridging the digital divide for those that are, being left behind. And that's a critical part of what we're doing at Done With It, and the overall message of what we're trying to get out about why e-waste is important, why reuse is so important.
So you've touched on three things there, Steven. One, just the sheer volume of materials that we're throwing out, which means if we throw them out and they go away forever, we have to get more materials elsewhere, right? So if you talk about circular economy, recycling e-waste correctly is about promoting circular economy, right? So you reuse the gold. One of the things on your website I saw was that $60 million of gold is thrown out just in the United States from cell phones each year, which when I saw that, I got the little gold pots in my eyes, all excited. I was like, okay, well, how can we actually reuse those materials? The other thing you kind of talk about is the toxins that come from e-waste.
Mm-hmm.
And you said 70% of toxins come in our waste stream come from e-waste?
Yes. So, it's because, in the manufacture of our devices and the manufacture of circuit boards, all that, you find arsenic. I'm just going to go through the list here. Arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury. Those are the top ones. And then you have a lot of these, a lot of our devices are made from plastics that have been impregnated with material to kind of keep them from catching fire. That material is very toxic. I mean, even in the US, I've seen some studies where that material has been found in breast milk in people living in the San Francisco area. This stuff, once it kind of gets out and gets into our, gets into the environment, it leaches out and it'll stay there forever. A single gram of mercury will pollute a pond 20 acres. And, there are thousands of tons of mercury that are in our e-waste that are being discarded every year.
So it's actually profitable in some senses for companies to reuse a lot of what you're talking about before they put it down the waste stream. One of my questions for you is, if you're looking at the 41 million cars worth of e-waste, right? How much of that could actually be reused and recycled? Is it like 50%? Is it 90%? Like, how much of it can actually be repurposed and reused and not go directly into the landfills?
It's much higher. I mean, there's estimates that it's north of 95%, somewhere in the 97 to 98% range, depending on the material. One thing about our electronic devices, especially, is that they're used with, some pretty quality components, especially the plastics. It's not like that same plastic that you find in a water bottle. These are very durable, reusable plastics that can be, in addition to being separated from the metals that are metal you can recycle as many times as you get your hands on it. So, that material is readily recyclable. And, some of the critical things are right now, like neodymium magnets that you find in our hard drives. Those rare earth metals, they're getting more scarce. The cobalt that's now that you find in lithium ion that's going into our batteries. And now that we're kind of electrifying with electric cars and the like, the demand for those materials are going through the roof. So we're just getting started on some industrial size systems for recycling those materials. That's going to be kind of the challenge of the next 15, 20 years as we electrify, is to turn some of these, is to be able to get these devices back and recycle them. And the other wave that's coming is two separate waves. One is the switch over from 4G to 5G, because all those devices, all those Internet of Things that were based on 3G, 4G technology, well, they're all going to be deprecated. They're all going to be old, and there's millions of them, and they're going to all have to be replaced. So that's coming. And you have, so there was another element.
Well, and hold on, Steven, I remember you told us a story specifically of an example of what that 4G to 5G transition looks like, just how much stuff you have to pull out, right?
Oh, it's immense. Now, some of it, I think you have some questions about that will lead to other discussions here in a minute, but to right now, as there are companies here in North America and parts of Asia that are pulling out all of their 4G equipment and they're upgrading it to 5G, especially on like the towers and your big infrastructure. Well, there's still good reuse and a good aftermarket for that in some developing countries that are still on 1G, 2G, 3G. So, they're going to be able to extend that life of that material for some time. The problem that you get into is those countries that are behind are also behind in their recycling technology and capacity. So are we just simply dumping our problems on somebody else because they're not as advanced as we are on our infrastructure? That's, there's a question I think we talked about the Basel Convention. That's a serious discussion as to how we handle this equitably. How do we make sure that we're providing opportunities for people across the world to have access to, cutting edge technologies, but also not making them be the dumping ground for all of our kind of end of life material.
Yeah, and specifically, I mean, let's talk about the Basel Convention. So, what is it? I mean, obviously, it's a city in Switzerland, but like, what did they agree to? What else is in the Basel Convention? Like, what's
Well,
going
it
on?
was, it's an international treaty of the UN. Is sponsored it, and it's been signed by, I think right now, like 189 separate countries. The U.S. is not one of them, but it was basically designed to regulate the way hazardous material is transported between countries. And let's see, there's 9 UN members that are not a treaty, they're not signatories of the treaty. United States is one of them. It's not a list that necessarily we want to be associated with all the time. East Timor, Fiji, Grenada, Haiti, San Marino, the Solomon Islands, South Sudan, and us. So,
Oh man, that's some good company to be hanging out with. Like, that's a club I want to join.
so I mean, but on the flip side, here's a problem that we actually had some direct contact with. We were a organization within Cambodia reached out to us to try to help us with their battery problem. Again, we are mostly at this point focused on North America, but we thought, hey, if we can do something, let's help. And one of the reasons they reached out to us was specifically because we were in North America. We were in the United States. As not being a signatories to this convention, we can actually import some of this material. But for them and for us, since we have the capacity to recycle it, we could bring it in and we could reuse it. Cambodia, who is a signatory to the convention, they have no domestic capacity to recycle. So they're kind of stuck with it. They can't get rid of it, and no one will take it. So,
but specifically, the reason for this convention, right? Like, on the TERRA website, right? There's this stuff about toxicity, right? Agbog Bloshi.
Agboglashi. Ghana.
Okay, whatever. I don't think we have a huge Ghanaian audience for this, so I think I'm not going to get like a bunch of angry emails like, "That's my hometown." Like, say it properly. But so tell us about this place, this suburb of Accra in Ghana.
So it's one of those locations that's kind of became a dumping ground for e-waste. And one of the kind of dirty tricks that some e-waste I would say recyclers, in very, very thick air quotes, would do was the Basel Convention it tries to keep us from sliding materials downstream to countries that can handle it. So the idea is but if you have viable materials, you have things that work, sure, they can be sent overseas. So what they would do is, like in a packet or container ship, pack in a container box full of mostly broken televisions, and at the front edge of the door, put a couple in there that worked. So if the container was open, they could test it, say, oh, see, they're all functional televisions. Not going to test every one. And, it ultimately ended up that they would just send material down here. It ended up just being piled up, burned, kids as young as, 3-4 years old, going through there, trying to pull out wires, trying to, burn the plastic off for copper. They're breathing all that in. This was an awful statistic that I've heard. I saw from a report that came out of there. I guess it was in the same as 2019, 2 years ago, that analysis revealed that an adult eating just a single egg in agboblashi would that the toxins would exceed the European Food Safety Authority limits by 220 times. So it's just they've got this above ground e-waste dump where materials are routinely being burned. It's leaching into their water supply. It's leaching into the ground. It's in the air, and it's just completely contaminating everybody and everything around it. One of the reasons that we have certified recycling here in the States and around the globe is the idea that it's not just best practices to how you handle the material, but it's also best practices to how you keep your employees safe. They're touching it. Environmental health and safety is a critical element to these companies earning their certification, because you just can't have people sticking their hands where there's mercury vapors and they're breathing that in. This is some pretty dangerous material that, unless it's handled properly, it can be a significant danger to human health, for certain.
What's amazing about this, right, is, I'll come on record. I think I've probably thrown an electric toothbrush straight in the trash at some point, right? Like, and the thing is that, you think about just that little behavior, right? You throw it in the trash, right? And it's going to end up in a landfill and leach a bunch of toxins and end up in your food and water supply. So that trash is coming back to you. But even like, you take that toothbrush and you dispose of it with a non-certified recycler, it may be sent over to Ghana, where it's creating this extremely toxic environment. Kids are skipping school to basically try and pull out whatever copper wiring or whatever else they can. And that's not the only thing, right? Even in the US, right? Like, there've been reports of prisoners in the US being made to improperly handle and try and recycle the sea waste, right?
Yes, that's something that's been quite controversial, about using prison labor for this material. To a certain extent, you kind of see both sides. There is an organization out in California called Homeboy Industries, and what they do is they take people who have recently been released, convicts that have recently been released, and have a rehabilitation program where they bring them in. They teach them the trade of doing electronic waste management the proper way. So it's kind of like a bridge to additional future opportunities by kind of retraining people and getting them used to a work environment. But then on the flip side is in a prison setting, do they have the proper environmental health and safety regulations going? Do they have the proper equipment? I know in the last several years, they had like 7 of them in California, 5 of them have closed. So it's like e-waste is a difficult nut to crack. There is a lot of things that are positive going on in e-waste right now, and a lot of negatives. There's just it's a really big problem that it's got to start being looked at and treated at the same level as we're seeing paper, plastic, glass, and other kind of recyclables being talked about, because this is critical infrastructure material. This is critical ongoing circular economy material. Rare earth metals, they're not going. They're called rare earths for a reason. So getting them can be tragic. Cobalt mines are often manned by children. So the more we can do an effective and efficient job of recycling this material, the higher quality of life around the world we're going to be able to provide and sustain our economy, and sustain our quality of life for hopefully years to come. But without it, we're putting the future at risk.
So one of the things I would like to do, and just to understand at this point, by people recycling e-waste correctly, you reduce the toxins from mining all the way down to the toxins from actually throwing it away. My question goes back to, you created a company to solve this, right? Where are the big streams coming from? Is it consumers? Is it businesses? Why did you, and when you're looking at creating TERRA, what was the thought process on how to tackle the problem?
Well, if you'd indulge me a minute, I could tell you a little bit of story as to how where TERRA came from, because it was a bit of an invention of my brain. I mean, we're not the first organization in the world out there trying to solve the e-waste problem. And my background is certainly not in anything related to this industry whatsoever. My background is in sales and advertising and marketing. I was a guy that built brands. But a couple of years back, my daughter, it was her job to do the recycling in the house, the paper, the plastic, and all that, sort everything. She was like 7 years old at the time. And she had been given my wife's old iPhone 4 to play with. So she was playing with it, and the neighbor girl, and they dropped it, landed face down, shattered the screen. And it was her job to do the recycling. So she was doing the recycling, and she had that phone, and she says, "What do I do with it?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know." So I just got, like what most people do, stuck in the drawer. I wasn't going to throw it away, but I just didn't know what to do with it at the time. And I ended up, within a couple of weeks, having lunch with a friend that I hadn't seen in about a year. And he had just changed positions, and he was now the senior vice president of a company that was doing e-waste. And he was leaving it to become the CEO of another one that had just earned their R2 certification. So I'm telling him this story. He's like, "Well, that's what I'm doing now. We're all about, sustainable recycling." And I thought that was pretty interesting. So we ended up talking about it, and we had lunch again a couple of months later. and he was telling me, yeah, we just earned this R2 certification, and we thought it was going to open up Pandora's box of new business because we're certified, but finds out that everybody he talks to, he's got to educate them as to what that means, why it's important. So as a sales and marketing guy, I'm like, that sounds like maybe this industry has a sales and marketing problem. So just picked up the phone, started talking to recyclers across the country, and I had a consistent message from everybody. Very proud that they had earned this certification. They really wanted to do what they could and do things right, but they had to pump up the volume. They had to get people talking about electronic waste and why certified electronic waste collection was important. So that was kind of the foundation of TERRA. And, it became, a goal of, all right, we're not gonna be able to solve this problem overnight, but a good place to start is to try to funnel as much material as we possibly can to this international network of certified recyclers. So our programs have all been kind of geared at that, is, educating the marketplace, getting materials in their hands, getting out in the communities and kind of demonstrating, why they're of value, why they're important, partners in their communities, and try to, again, then provide some additional opportunities for people to send it in. Because like we talked about in the beginning, most places in this country, if you're not close to a Best Buy or a Staples, you're in a recycling desert for your e-waste. And there are so many communities that have just still are working with the county dump. And all that material goes straight out there and they just drop it off and it's gone. No one knows what's in there. It's been collecting up in there for 10s and 20s, upwards of 50 years. And all that material is now starting to leach into our water supplies, our food systems. And, everything we throw away, and we're going to be eating it. So it just kind of became a passion once I started kind of digging into it and finding out the opportunity in it. Because there's so many benefits that can be derived from just handling this material sustainably. It's not that difficult. And there's a big mental block a lot of people have just about cost. Well, I spent $800 on that iPhone 5 years ago. Well, yeah, and it's really not worth much because it iPhone, the software doesn't work on it anymore. It's not supported. It's not doing any good in your drawer. 3 years ago, it could have been useful to be reused, and you're going to probably end up throwing it out. And then it's like, well, I'm not going to pay to recycle it because I paid $800 for it again 5 years ago. It's going to take, individuals, OEMs and manufacturers, city, county, federal governments working together to start, kind of changing people's attitudes about this and, providing more opportunities for folks to recycle. And if we can help bridge that gap and start that conversation going, that's where we want to be.
Well, and also, I mean, Steven, even if it was free, right? Like if you could, send in your e-waste for free and get it recycled free, it wouldn't actually be free, right?
No,
like
no.
The cost is baked in, or someone is making so much money off of that e-waste that they can offer it for free, right? So
no, even the gold. People talk, well, there's gold in there. 20 years ago, the CPUs, they were heavily laden in gold. The manufacturers got pretty clever. They realized, we want to be more efficient with the materials that we're using. So now there's microns of gold in these chips. So it takes that much more to, it's that much more difficult to recycle and recoup the material. Actually the processes that have been in place for many years for collecting that material and extracting it have been pretty archaic. There's a lot of new technology coming on that is able to get that material much more efficiently and much more safely and sustainably than just kind of melting it down, or using all kinds of caustic chemicals to kind of dissolve the other materials around it away. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of new investment coming into e-waste in this space because, people are recognizing the potential opportunity. But, at the end of the day, it's definitely not free. It's transportation, it's manpower, it's training, it's getting those materials sorted, collected, moved around the country, recycled efficiently, put back into the economy. That's a lot of time and expense. So if for people I talk to, I say, if you have for lunch had that tuna fish sandwich and you threw it in the trash because you were done with it, you paid for that. When you pay every once or twice a week, garbage man's going to come to your house and get that stuff. You pay them for that. Why wouldn't you pay to recycle an old computer, which is a lot more difficult to recycle?
And also, if you're not paying for recycling this thing, you're paying for the forever chemicals that are going to be in your food and water supply, right? Like that's what a lot of these chemicals that are on this e-waste are called. They're called forever chemicals. Once they wash into the water supply or the food supply, they're not getting out. Once they get into your body, they're not getting out. So would you, how much would you pay to not have a bunch of toxic chemicals in your food, your water, your body forever?
Well, and to that point too, if you don't have a circular economy, extracting these materials from the earth is going to be more expensive. So consumer products are going to be more expensive. If you don't start recycling and doing these things correctly, consumer products are going to be more expensive too, because there's going to be less and less resources. You're going to have to dig deeper and deeper to get these resources, which is going to cause more and more damage from an environmental standpoint. So if you look at across the whole chain, it makes a lot of sense. Steven, I want to jump into a little bit more back into your guys' business model, why you created the structure you created, and how it can help companies really, a lot of the companies we work and the customers we have talk about, hey, our e-waste goes to our IT team. Well, now we're in a work from home world where 30% plus of people are working from home. How many people are saying, I'm going to actually take the time. I don't go to the office. I'm going to take the time to drop this off of my IT team versus throw this in the trash can. So I want to really understand the business model you set up, and also how work from home has really kind of probably accelerated what you guys do.
Yeah. So, first it was our general objective is to kind of educate the marketplace as to why certification matters, get more people using certified recyclers. So part of that too is we have, with TERRA, a program called TERRA Connect. So if you're a company that needs these services, we'll connect you with our network. And again, we have the largest network of certified recyclers in North America. So we can find somebody local and trained that can handle your material. So that's kind of first and foremost is, we want to make sure that the businesses that we engage with are using somebody certified, and that if they're not, we can help them engage with somebody that is. The next bit.
So like an easy button. So you guys are like the easy button where they don't have to try to figure it all out themselves. They just go to TERRA.
Right, exactly. And the other part is there are so many companies out there right now, and this was an important element of TERRA. This is kind of my branding and marketing brain, plugging into this program a little bit, that are actually doing the right thing. If you're a bank, if you're an insurance company, you've got this pretty locked down. Healthcare companies, because if your material gets out, if you have an old hard drive on somebody's personal work computer that gets out, and those records get out into the world, that can be pretty expensive for you. The folks at, oh my gosh, the name is escaping me right now. One of the big, Wall Street financial companies, they did not properly destroy data on a server. It got out. It cost them $50 million in fines. So, these companies understand that, if we don't do data destruction, if we don't do this stuff properly, we're going to get burned. Target got hit for our $28 million fine in California for improperly disposing batteries. So there are places, there's a financial impact if you don't do it right. But for those that are, that are, they're utilizing it, they need to be recognized. So, we're kind of inviting them to be part of the alliance that we call our sustainer members. We have, within our organization, we've got our certified recyclers kind of at the top of our pyramid of members. And we have a group called Allieds, which are the companies that, provide products and services to those members. And then we engage with cities, like we're doing our digital inclusion program. We have people like Louisville and the city of Philadelphia working with us. And then our sustainers. Those are our brands that we're working with, the organizations that are working with, that want to be committed to, sustainable recycling, proper e-waste management, working with us. We're connecting them with our members. And then we're also helping them, promote the fact that they are doing it the right way by co-branding with them. And we're providing their employees, like we are with you all through that EarthUP promo, is, kind of paying it forward. So now as an organization, we've adopted e-waste best practices. Let's provide our workforce with the same options. So we provide them with discounts at donewithit.org. And we're also setting up now, to answer your question, Steven, about home employees, take back programs for those employers. So now I've got employees all over the country. It's time for us to refurbish their devices, send them back in through our network, send them back in through Done With It, make sure that data is destroyed, make sure that material gets either reused or recycled. And then we're, further than that is we're working with, some of those same brands to take a portion of those materials that are coming in, or as many of them as they can, and applying them to our, our digital inclusion program. So we got that a couple-year-old laptop, which is now being, they're done with it, still viable, still can be used, and we can get it back into the hands of a student or somebody in the Philadelphia area or somewhere else. So that's kind of the model. Is that we're an alliance, so we're helping our certified recyclers communicate and do business amongst themselves. Because I might be a certified recycler in California, but I have a client in New York. Well, I'm not going to send my truck all the way out there. Maybe I can partner with somebody locally. They can handle the job, and we can kind of split profits, and we can do a more efficient way of handling our clients. We can provide our clients that are part of the network with access to the Done With It program. So we can kind of give them a benefit back, and they can pay it forward to their employees. We have, again, the city's involved. We have the brands involved. We're just trying to build an ecosystem of partners that are, bringing and focusing more attention on this problem and bringing solutions to the marketplace.
Well, and also to what you were saying, Steven, right? Like if you're a big corporation and you have this, your IT department is dealing with your e-waste, what your IT department is doing, which you might not realize, is social justice work, right? Like they're literally solving problems like digital inclusion, maybe improving healthcare access in the developing world. They could be doing a ton of really, really good stuff that your employees would want to know about, because they'd want to know, hey, when I take my laptop to the e-waste department, it's not just that I'm like filling out my TPS report and doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I'm actually like helping someone somewhere, right?
And this applies to every type of business. If you're an accounting firm, an advertising agency, your manufacturer, it doesn't matter. You have electronics. You have devices that you're retiring. E-waste applies to you. So why not, do what you can to first protect yourself, and secondly, make sure that material is at best, kind of refurbished and put back into your own local community. I mean, it's very easy, low-hanging fruit for an organization to get involved with e-waste best practices.
And as companies really are pushing for reporting on ESG metrics, one of the things we're excited about partnering with you guys is that feedback loop, right? Mm-hmm. As companies, we kind of send to you guys recycle, we're able to highlight, the impacts from that. And it's going to be great as we can kind of dive deeper. And then the thing that I think is overlooked from a social standpoint isn't, it is where it goes after it's been used, but even before it's been made, and how that mining, where we're mining these resources from, how we get the lithium, what is the impact in the local communities from doing that? How much is reduced by reusing, right? So it's really exciting. Once, I think you're going to have, this industry is going to transform, as like you said, we're going to have electric cars, electric buses, electric airplanes, electric, ATVs, hopefully soon, because I like ATVing, So as we start getting a lot more of these different things, we're going to have to really understand what's the impact from mining it, what's the impact from waste, and how to kind of create that circular loop, which is pretty cool that you're working on that.
And that kind of reminded me. I'm sorry, just a quick diversion. I was trying to think of the two things earlier that are the next waves, and one of those actually is energy. Is that a lot of for the last 20 years, people have been talking about solar and putting in a lot of solar panels. A lot of those now are coming at end of life, and they're difficult to recycle. So, as we're talking about lithium ion, as we're talking about solar and other kind of renewables, that material also has to be thought of, not only how they manufacture it to be, ultimately more readily broken down to be recycled, but there's a wave of that stuff coming.
And it's important at the very beginning, like you said, one of the building terms for this that big, builders use is design for deconstruction. As we're building these batteries, as we're building this, companies need to realize that we're going to have to reuse it. So we have to figure out how to, and it's actually profitable for them to figure that out, right? It's in their own best interest.
And it's really, Steven, it sounds like what you're saying is that in solving the problem of climate change, we're creating the problem of e-waste, right?
Yes. So integrating, ourselves. So first, and our industry needs to get its arms locked, and we've got to be on singing from the same songbook first before we can get into a circular chain of other people that are working together well. It's just kind of, it's like it's a wheel that's just kind of rolling along flat and bumpy in a lot of different areas. because all the different components of the circular supply chain have to start working together. But even within those individual components, there's a lot of problems. So it's like we're trying to get our own house in order, so as we can be prepared to work side by side in an alliance with manufacturers, with municipal waste organizations, with our members, with the public, and try to get everybody on the same page as to how we're going to move forward in this very critical space, which we're calling e-waste, or we'd like to call it get out of the nomenclature of e-waste and start calling it e-scrap, because that's ultimately what it is. It's scrap material that can be fed back into the circular economy.
Hey, Steven, question for you. What are some gaps? Most big companies we've talked with have an IT department that does the e-waste recycling. What are some big gaps that you've seen in where e-waste might be falling through the cracks, where they might not be noticing it, and how TERRA can kind of jump in and support them?
God, that's a difficult question because it is all over. It really depends on what kind of business you're operating. A lot of people have, the way they've purchased their equipment could be that they've leased it from a value-added reseller. They may have bought it outright from Dell or from whomever. They may lease or have purchased their printers and other equipment. They may be, depreciating it off their books. They may not be able to because they've leased it. So it's for company by company, the way they handle kind of their electronics and their footprint is very different. So, ultimately it's for the marketing people that I'm speaking with, because I think those are the ones that are kind of most closely, kind of getting their arms now around the ESG concept and the corporate social responsibility is kind of knocking on their door and saying, hey guys, do you know what you're doing downstream? And if not, you better, because, again, like if you have a data breach, that's going to burn your brand real bad. You better understand exactly where this stuff is going if it's data sensitive to you. Also, you don't want to find something with your name stapled all over it, sitting out in the street because somebody dumped it improperly. To a certain extent, it's an insulation that they've got to understand what's going on just to protect themselves. But I think that the bigger, once you kind of have that conversation with them, is that the bigger opportunity is, hey, look, whether it's today or tomorrow or 100 years from now, and this company's still around, it's going to be using electronics. It has been from day one. It's going to be until its last days. Use that to your advantage. Do it the right way, and simply, it's one more angle to be able to demonstrate that you guys are good corporate citizens. And it's the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit they have, because redefining your supply chain and where you're sourcing materials, even if you're somebody like Procter and Gamble, and you're buying and all kinds of material all over the world, and you're trying to make sure that that's sustainably sourced, that it's minimizing carbon emissions and the rest of it. But I know when I'm done with something in my office or in one of our facilities, if it doesn't go to the right place, that's on me. It's really easy to control. You just have to make sure that when this material is finished, we're moving on from it, it's got to get into the hands of a certified recycler.
So it sounds like a big
Because
opportunity. Sorry, go ahead, Hunter.
Well, I was going to say otherwise, and it's not just it ended up in the street, right? Like you don't want it ending up in Ghana. You don't want it being recycled by prisoners who don't have proper protective equipment, right?
No.
There's so many, beyond sort of the data risk, right? There's so many reputational risks for your company and for your brand. And like the nice thing is that if you hand it to TERRA, you know that it's going to be properly disposed of. And that peace of mind is invaluable.
Yeah, we can help walk you to the place you need to go.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think that you said earlier, which is really important, is also turning in your electronics as soon as they're no longer useful to you, right? Because if you stick that, and I think that would be one of the big gaps for companies, Steven, is probably like there's stuff that sits in drawers for 5 years.
Every
right?
company has that closet.
Yeah, and when it's sitting in there for 5 years, it's going from the reuse column where it could be reused by someone and like help solve the digital divide or digital equity straight into the recycle column, right? Like that extra 5 years makes all the difference in terms of whether it has a second life.
Exactly. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of this is there's a huge opportunity for education too, right? I mean, if people, when I first partnered with you guys and I started being aware, holy crap, look how much valuable material is being thrown out. Look how much toxins are being like, my eyes were open, right? And I had no idea. And also the social, I understood some of the environmental impact, but I didn't understand the social impact that can come from this as well. So a lot of it is really educating workforces so they take this seriously, and then they can also tell their company, hey, this is an opportunity to reuse this quicker before the end of life, or this is an opportunity for capturing another 10% of e-waste that we might not have been able to see. So educating employees might be able to surface a lot of the different insights on how companies can do a better job with e-waste.
Exactly. And, and the other nice thing about it too is, it's not just for big cities. This isn't just an urban, opportunity. It's a rural opportunity too. And that's where the demand is the greatest. If you're in a small community, and small, I mean, just like under 100,000 people, it's very likely you're living in some sort of a, recycling desert. And if you've got a business down there, or you've got a branch that's in that area, to be able to do like, a corporate e-waste day and be able to, serve, 1,000 of your employees that are maybe in a La Crosse, Wisconsin or something like that, that's great. I mean, because that material otherwise, has a very good chance that it might not be getting to the right hands.
And something we're doing on our platform right now on the EarthUP, one of the reasons we have this is it is e-waste month on our platform, where we're trying to really educate people and drive people to solutions like your guys' TERRA. And again, this is the e-waste month. This is the month on e-waste. We do have some questions coming in right now. And maybe we do a couple questions and then we can kind of jump back in and then end with a few more questions. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Perfect. Janice asks, with chip shortages from pretty much all electronics everywhere, can elements of our old electronics be used to help mitigate that? Can you take an old chip, update it a bit, and stick it into a new product?
Yes, there's some of your high-end CPUs that are running our desktop computers, and those are constantly changing every couple of months. So really it's but a lot of chips, sound chips, other kind of chips that many of them haven't changed in decades, can still be harvested and recycled. So yeah, it's the chip problem is a problem for different industries. You hear a lot about it, like the car industry. We might not be able to make our Ford F-150s next week because we're running out of chips. A lot of those are legacy chips. So, kind of making sure that our old devices get collected and some of those older chips get pulled off and reused can definitely mitigate some of that. Some of the device shortages that we may be running into this holiday season, that it might be that the newest, latest device is not there and not ready. It's because the capacity on building and manufacturing the new chips hasn't caught up yet.
So you're saying you can actually take existing chips out of one and put it in another without even necessarily updating that chip, because there's a lot of chips that are just
I mean, it's like so those chips, they just pull them right out of the breadboards, that they can stick them in another one.
I didn't know that. Indy asks, you mentioned the financial risk to companies who don't recycle e-waste properly. What incentives are there? Any grants for businesses, credits, or anything like that? So is with the new Build Back Better, anything kind of coming down the road to incentivize companies to do this right, or is it all the stick if they do this wrong?
It's more stick. There are some states. We're a republic, so some states are doing a good job, some states are doing a poor job, and that's kind of what clogs things from doing on a national level. So there are some opportunities at different states that are kind of right now. There's two groups. Literally, 25 states have some sort of e-waste legislation on the books. 25 of them do not. Within those states that do, and you can find this material on our website as to who does. Some of them are offering some e-waste programs, but in general, no, not so much. And even with the latest bill, infrastructure bill, I haven't had a chance to go through all of it because it's changed so much in its last couple of weeks of iteration. A lot of that material was around batteries, but it was more around battery manufacturing. So it seemed to be kind of a tip to the hat of the automotive industry to build some capacity, domestic capacity, to be able to produce the lithium ion cells for batteries for cars outside of kind of like the gigafactories that Elon Musk is putting up.
Do you know if those gigafactories allow the recycling of batteries? Are they hoping that old Teslas will use those batteries, or any other recycling from?
Well, we talked about that next wave. So we've got members that are in the battery recycling industry that are taking that material. There's a new startup. It was actually a Tesla, one of the high-end Tesla staff. Just started. They started a company called Redwood Industries. Has gotten a ton of new seed money to start recycling that material. Like we talked about early on. That's one of the next waves. You got 4G coming, the 4G 5G switch over. You have the switch over to electric cars, and you've got solar panels. Those are the kind of like the three big waste areas that are coming in the next 10 to 15 years.
Tamara asks, do all cables count as e-waste, like old telephone connections, HDMI cables?
Oh, yeah.
VGAs, all of that good stuff? So
that material is very recyclable. Whether it's either you kind of bundled up as part of being resold items, because a lot of the devices that our members will get when they remanufacture them and get them back out is they don't necessarily have all the power cables whoever brought it in to be recycled didn't bring all the power cables because they stuck that in the box in their garage. So, getting those and being able to mix and match those things is important. And then if they're kind of at, older model, because there's been how many different versions of USB cables? Those can be readily kind of repaired and stripped down and recycled.
Yeah, I know my dad always had so many cords everywhere, Ziploc bags full of every single charger he ever had, just in case he needed to use that. And we all try not to be our parents sometimes, but I also have.
But you need, some of that stuff you need to keep. I've got the box that we call electronal marvels, which is just a kind of old USB cables and things like that, because you never know. I had to get some video off of an old DV cam, and I had the cable.
Yep, exactly. Having all those relic ones are, you do find a use for them. Before we jump back into the customer questions, I have a question for you, just to make it so the listeners, people that are in sustainability departments, really understand how the process works with you guys and TERRA, right? So if they have, say I'm a company, and we have 40,000 employees, half of them work from home part-time. How does TERRA jump in and help a company like mine?
Well, first we're going to kind of assess what your waste needs are and what your footprint is. So being able to determine where all your different campuses are, where your people are located, the type of equipment that you're, processing on an ongoing basis will kind of help us then, put together a kind of a list of our network. These are the ones that are most likely to be able to support your needs and are, close enough to be efficient. That's an important component too, is, we can always connect somebody with somebody way far away, but if we can do something in the immediate area, that's much better, because then it allows us to be able to do the other things that are beyond just the B2B of, the employee engagements and certain, on-site activities and those sort of things. So first is, just contact us. We will start the process of doing an evaluation of your needs. We'll bring some players to the table with expertise in those specific areas and start talking about how we would process this material potentially. And then we'll come up with a plan. It can be very simple. So if you're a company that's just, you're located in Nashville, okay, call us up. We'll connect you with our Nashville recycler. It's going to be pretty easy. But if you're somebody like Marriott Corporation and you've got hotels in everywhere, and you've got televisions, you got computers, you've got remote controls, you've got a million different consumer-oriented devices scattered everywhere, and probably a mixture of different value-added resellers and people that you're buying stuff from, and where are they taking it and where is it going? That's going to take some time to figure out. But because we've got this large footprint of 90 facilities across North America, we have a pretty strong capacity to handle any problem.
Awesome. We have enough time for one more question coming in from the audience. Darren asks, you said data gets destroyed. Can I also have them help me recover my data and give it to me before they destroy it and recycle it? So if somebody sent in the data, could you guys help get some of that data back?
There may be some of our members that do the data recovery, but their main focus is data destruction. So whether that's degaussing, kind of doing a software or, a magnet-based data destruction, or physical shredding, or both. They're their expertise is in making sure that that stuff is unreadable, not uncovering stuff that has been lost.
Yeah, so the answer is pretty much no.
I could ask. That's one of the questions that has never come up thus far. No, these guys, they like to destroy the data.
Yeah, which makes sense. If you give the machine away, the number one thing is to get that data destroyed and deleted.
Yes.
And it should be reassuring that they don't have the capacity to peek in and recover your data, right? Just in case. So,
no, I mean, what they are doing though, which is really, again, a lot of innovation going on in this space, is one of our members in Georgia has got a new technology that's called Jasper, where they're taking devices that ordinarily would fail, but aren't physically damaged, but when they fail when they're being tested, and they're able to kind of repair those, because not all companies want their data like physically shredded. Some of them will allow their drives to be wiped and resold, which that's the ideal way to do it if you can do that. And this new technology is actually recovering more drives. It's actually increasing the ones that have failed, and they're getting a 50% return on those that have previously failed that would have otherwise been shredded. So a lot of good things happening.
As we go to wrap this up, is there one thing, Steven, you just mentioned that's a pretty cool technology that's coming. Is there one thing that you see in the next few years, 5 years, 10 years, really revolutionizing the e-scrap industry?
There are some technologies that are working on kind of these MRFs, these single locations where people are bringing all kinds of material and it's a single stream recycling. I've seen some investments going on in that space to try to be able to, put the device in, it goes through its Rube Goldberg machine, and at the end, it's all been sorted into different piles. That technology is in the works, but even with that is, there's only going to be a limited capacity to how many of those you can put in and how much material they're going to be able to handle. So, having a strong capacity, a strong, infrastructure of these certified recyclers everywhere, that they're getting enough material to be profitable, that people understand that it's a cost, it's not free. We need to build the capacity of these organizations to be, to do more. And, it's an area that they're really focused on, which I think would be really great if one part of this kind of Build Back Better program that we just talked about a minute ago that they're doing is, a lot of workforce development initiatives. And within this space, demanufacturing and pulling these things apart efficiently is something that is kind of naturally, it's kind of a natural affinity for people who are on the autism spectrum. We have a lot of our members that are hiring people on the autism spectrum and finding that they're incredible employees that are very efficient. So, I think an innovation in our space could be, we could become more of a home for those folks and putting more people to work that traditionally have had a difficulty finding jobs, and being able to do that all across the country.
That's amazing. And I think that's the really exciting thing, right? Is that, as the future is electric, right? And we are going to be doing more and more electrification as part of the fight against climate change. And e-waste is either going to be the next challenge we really face. It's going to be a major problem, or it's going to be a major opportunity, right? There's a ton of really valuable resources in e-waste, or as we're now calling it, e-scrap. And, those can be harvested to reduce social inequities in how things are mined. It can be used to create jobs for people on the autism spectrum. It can be used to help bridge the digital divide. It can do a ton of good. So either we're going to create a giant problem for ourselves and a giant health problem for all of us, or we're going to use that material to create a ton of good for everybody. And that's really the opportunity. And fortunately, there is one group that you can always have total confidence will do the right thing with your e-scrap, and that is TERRA. And we've been very lucky to have Steven Napoli on this call with us to act as our guide through the world of e-scrap.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you, Steven. Thank you, Hunter. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your members today and be able to add some additional sunshine to this very important topic.
Awesome. And again, it is e-waste month over at EarthUP. So be sure to go over to EarthUP and you'll find a range of resources, how you can recycle your e-waste, learn more about these topics. and a ton more.